So this exact year, 2026, is the best year to get started with home bartending. And in this video, I'm going to be explaining exactly why that's true. My name is Ron Virpin. I'm a full-time medical doctor, and I've been a home bartender for over 5 years now. During that time, I've learned how to make over 100 different cocktails, and I've thrown over 50 cocktail parties. And I teach other busy professionals how to make cocktails at home. And in this video, I'm going to be going over the different reasons for why this year, 2026, is actually the best year to get into home bartending. And first, I'll start with my own journey. I actually started home bartending in the year 2020. And I had previously thought about getting into home bartending for probably like 5 or 6 years before that on at least 2 or 3 different occasions. And I finally made the push in 2020. And when I did that, I actually thought 2020 was the best year to get into home bartending for a couple of different reasons. One is that obviously everyone remembers 2020 as being associated with the whole COVID-19 pandemic and lockdowns. So there were a couple of reasons why that was a great time to get started with home bartending. First of all, because of the lockdowns, everyone was spending more time at home. So it was natural for people to learn new hobbies. Pretty much everyone learned some new hobby or some new skill at that time. For me, it happened to be home bartending. So it was a great time in general to learn new skills. And home bartending, I felt, especially at that time, was great. One is that, people were drinking more, probably for a couple of different reasons. One, people were spending more time at home. Two, people's, didn't have as much to do in terms of their activities and social life and things like that. Three, mental health was at an all-time low because, people were socially isolated. People were dying all across America and throughout the rest of the world as well. It was a very scary time, for people lost their jobs and all these different reasons. Mental health was at an all-time low. So, although I don't recommend drinking alcohol as a cure or as a treatment or something like that for mental health, there is still that association that I have to acknowledge, especially as a doctor myself. Poor mental health and alcohol use are associated in some way. So, that is one of the reasons also why people were drinking more. So people were more at home, people's mental health was worse, there was nothing else to do, so there are a couple of different reasons for why people were drinking more at that time. And then another big reasons why 2020 was such a great time to get into home bartending was that you couldn't go out to bars, you couldn't go out to nightclubs, you couldn't go out to lounges, you couldn't really even go out to restaurants. So you couldn't go out to places to enjoy cocktails and drinks and things like that at those places. You had to find alternative ways to do that. So, if you couldn't go out to a restaurant or a bar or a nightclub or something like that to get a good drink, the best thing that you could do was to learn how to make the drinks yourself. And then that way you can still enjoy those same cocktails, but you can do it in 2020, you can do it in a more safe way. You didn't have to expose yourself to other people that may have had the virus at that time. So, and also with that, you could then take the next step and start hosting some smaller get-togethers and having your close circle of people come over and enjoy drinks together. So you could still enjoy those same cocktails you do, but you could do it in what at that time was considered to be a more safe way to do it. So instead of going to a nightclub or a bar and exposing yourself to a lot of other people that may have been sick with COVID or something like that, you could then take that party and bring it into your own home bar and, just invite a few close loved ones, friends and families and things like that, and enjoy cocktails together. So for all those different reasons, I actually thought 2020 was the best time to get into home bartending. And the COVID-19 pandemic contributed in a lot of ways to me getting into home bartending for the very first time. Because, it was a time when people were learning more skills. It was a time when people were drinking more. It was a time when you could not go out to enjoy cocktails at bars and nightclubs and lounges and things like that. So for all those different reasons, 2020 was a great time to get into home bartending. But I actually think this year, 2026, is an even better time to get into home bartending. And there are a couple of reasons why this is true. One is that, for better or worse, AI is a bigger part of people's lives these days. AI has been around for quite some time, but only recently has it become more available to the general public in America and the rest of the world as well. So this actually helps with being able to learn new skills in general. For any new skill, whether it's home bartending or not, you can actually just go on ChatGPT or any other AI software and just type in, how do I learn home bartending? You can type in, what is a good recipe for a margarita, mojito? What's a good recipe for an old fashioned? You can learn all the different recipes just through ChatGPT. You can learn all the different techniques through ChatGPT. You can learn all the different tools that you need to buy through ChatGPT. You can learn all these different things through that. So for better or worse, AI is helping people learn new skills, and that can include home bartending, that can include musical instruments, that can include languages. Whatever the case may be, whatever skill you're trying to learn, there is some degree of using ChatGPT or some other AI tool to be able to learn those different skills. I myself have used this to learn different things about YouTube and to improve my titles and thumbnails and things like that for YouTube. So I myself use it for different skills, so certainly it can be used for home bartending as well. So that's one of the reasons it's used more. That's one of the reasons why 2026 is actually the best time to get into home bartending. Another reason I think 2026 is a great time to get into home bartending is that, one of the long tail effects of the whole COVID-19 pandemic is that in general, people are not going out as much. People are not going as much to clubs and bars and things like that. Although, the whole lockdown and all those COVID-19 restrictions and stuff are essentially dead, and they have been for a few years now, people are not, if you go to nightclubs and things like that, I live in Las Vegas, so I of course know this is like basically the nightclub and nightlife capital of America, and arguably one of the capitals of nightlife in the entire world. And one of the things I hear in the local news is that attendance is down. Less visitors are coming to Las Vegas. Less people are going to nightclubs. Less people are going to these different parties and bars and lounges and all these different types of events on the Las Vegas Strip and all those casinos. And that's comparing 2026 to something like 2018 or 2019 pre-pandemic numbers. So although there are no restrictions, the same way there were no restrictions in 2019, 2018, 2017, all those different years before the pandemic, the numbers have still not recovered to what they were pre-pandemic times. And there are a couple of different reasons why. One is that, because of the whole COVID-19 pandemic, people were used to not going out. People learned to live and have a good social life and have good experiences, things like that, without having the need to go out and things like that. So I would say that's really the main reason, because people got used to not going out. When people were allowed to go out again, a lot of them just never felt the need to. Another big reason is that things are just more expensive in general. Even accounting for inflation, the whole nightlife game, getting drinks when you go out, getting food when you go out, getting admission to these different parties, they cost way more now than they did in like 2018, 2019, for example. And that's even if you account for inflation. Even if you account for inflation, the prices have still gone out by an exponential rate compared to what they were in the pre-pandemic era. And another reason is that, they're not promoting, at least what I've noticed is that at these nightclubs and parties and things like that, they're not really promoting to every kind of person the way they were before. They're really trying to promote more to high rollers and people that have more money to spend on things like tables, for example. So what that really does is that although, the people that have more income and are higher class in terms of their socioeconomic status, they're able to get that better experience. But for the general public, for regular, hardworking, busy professionals like you and I, we are kind of left out. The people that have a ton of money, they can still enjoy that nightlife the way they used to in the pre-pandemic era. I would say it's probably even better for those people. But for the general people, the general population of America and the rest of the world, people that are just, hardworking, they want to go out every now and then to have a good time, it's just not nearly as affordable as it was in that old era. And it's not really catered as much to us as it was back then. Back then, nightclubs used to be catered to every kind of person. And, bars and cocktail bars and things like that, they were also catered to every kind of person. But now everything is more catered towards essentially what I like to call the high rollers. Everything is more catered to those kind of people. So the rest of us are kind of left out. So what that means essentially is that there is a space for home parties. I think this is something that really took off in 2020, and now in the year 2026, it's even more popular. I think more people in general are tending to prefer house parties and things like that. And there are a couple different reasons why that's better. One is that you control the guest list. Everyone there is somebody that you know. So that's better than going out to nightclubs and having to hang out with people you don't know and strangers and things like that. Whereas you go to a house party, that's going to be your friends, your family, your coworkers, your loved ones, whatever the case may be. It's going to be people that you know and that you want to spend time with. And then a couple other reasons why you have more control at home parties versus nightclubs. You have control over the music. You have control over the food. You have control over what kind of alcohol is going to be served. You can control over the cocktail menu. So because of these different reasons, I would say home parties are where social life has shifted. It started to shift in 2020, and I would say now in the year 2026, it's even more shifted in that direction. So that's one of the main reasons why I think 2026 is the best year to get into home bartending, because people are looking for that experience. People are looking to have high quality, cocktails, but they don't want to go out. People are not going out nearly as much compared to the pre-pandemic era, but they still want to go out. This is different than 2020. In 2020, people weren't going out compared to pre-pandemic era, but they also didn't want to go out. And that was true in like 2021, 2022, even 2023. I would say now in 2026, people still want to go out and have social experiences. the way they did in 2018 and 2019, but they don't want to go out to nightclubs to do that. They don't want to go out to cocktail bars to do that. They don't want to go out to restaurants to do that. They want to do it at their friend's home, at their family member's home, at their coworker's home, something like that. And that's why I think home bartending is great, because now is really the best time to learn this hobby, because this is the best era when it comes to hosting cocktail parties. I think they're going to be even better in 2026 than they were in previous years. In my heyday of hosting parties, I was doing the most in like 2020, 2021, 2022, that era. I would say it's even better now in 2026 because they now have that itch. They want to get back to that social life that existed in the pre-pandemic era, but they don't want to go out in public to do that. They want to do that in the privacy of their loved one's home. So that's why I think home bartending really fills that need. Learning home bartending allows you to throw those kind of parties because people aren't going out and enjoying parties in those kind of venues anymore, but they still want to have those parties. And like I said, this is different from the early 2020s when people weren't going out, but also they didn't want to go out because they were afraid of getting sick with COVID-19. In 2026, people still want to go out. They're not afraid of going out, but they're not going out to those kind of places in general. They want to go to house parties. So if you learn this skill and you learn how to throw high quality house parties, you learn how to throw parties that are more fun than nightclubs, that are more fun than any kind of cocktail bar, any kind of restaurant, any kind of experience that you can get at these public venues, you can really stand out. You can really show off your skills and really have a great experience and create that amazing environment for your friends and your family and your coworkers and your loved ones and things like that. So that's why I think 2026 is really the best year to get into home bartending, because when I first started, people weren't going out, but they didn't want to go out either. Now people want to go out, but they're not going out to those venues. They want to go to house parties. So I think this is a great time to get into home bartending. So just to recap before we go on to the next point, two main reasons why I think 2026 is a great year to get into home bartending. One is that the rise of ChatGPT and other AI models allow people to learn skills more easily. So I think this is a great time to get into home bartending because you have this extra resource. I don't think ChatGPT is going to be the be all end all in terms of learning home bartending because I have a separate video on this that I made recently. But home bartending, because it's inherently social, you still need to learn a lot of those skills from somebody that's actually hosted parties like myself, somebody that's hosted 50 plus cocktail parties, somebody that's learned all of these recipes, somebody that's made cocktails out of my apartment, somebody that's served thousands of cocktails to hundreds of different people. You still need to learn from a person like myself, but ChatGPT can fill that other void. They can teach you the recipes. They can teach you what tools you need to buy. They can teach you all the basic techniques of cocktail making. You don't have to pour through endless volumes of different cocktail books and blogs on cocktails and recipe lists and all those different things. You can use ChatGPT to learn those logistics, and then you can come up to somebody like myself who will teach you all the different more human aspects of home bartending, how to get started as a person that has a busy professional life, how to host parties, how to be hospitable, how to be a good bartender and when you interact with other people. So you have these different aspects of home bartending. ChatGPT is a great supplemental tool for learning home bartending. So that's why I think 2026 is a great year to get into home bartending. The second point is that 2026 compared to any previous time, in pre-pandemic, I would say people had the option of going to nightclubs and bars and things like that. And it was a great option for enjoying cocktails in a public environment and having a social experience with other people. Post-pandemic and post-pandemic era, the early 2020s, even somewhat into like 2023, 2024, people still wanted that social experience and stuff because things were more open now. But for various different reasons, nightclubs and the whole nightlife scene in general had become more cut off to the general American public and to the general public throughout the world as well. So now in 2026, we're at an interesting time because people want to go out, but they're not going out. So this is where house parties and home bartending in general comes into a bigger play, because if you learn the skill, then you can throw those kind of parties and you can give people that space that really doesn't exist anymore. People don't want to go out to nightclubs, but they also don't want to just stay at home and do nothing on their weekends. They want something in between, and that's where home bartending fits into that mold and really covers that space that's really left out of the market completely right now. And the third reason, I would say the third and final reason why I think 2026 is the best year to get into home bartending is because there is just more content out there than ever before. Even when I was getting started in 2020, there were only a few channels and there was not as much information on home bartending. A lot of bartending topics and stuff like that were geared more towards I would say they were geared more towards professional bartenders. They were geared more towards people that wanted to become professional bartenders. Now there's more of a space in terms of content in general that is for home bartenders, because so many people got into it after the pandemic, including myself, and all those different reasons. I think there's just more content, and more good content, especially for people that just want to learn how to make cocktails at home. They want to unwind after a busy night. They want to have a date night with their partner. They want to throw a small get together for their coworkers. They want to host a big party every now and then for their friends and their family and their coworkers and things like that. So I think there's just more good content out there. And of course, I'm obviously going to be plugging my own channel, because I've created this specifically for busy professionals that want to learn home bartending. You know, like I said, these are the kind of events that you're going to be throwing. You're going to be wanting to just make a cocktail to unwind after a busy night. You want to have a date night once a week with your partner. You want to host a small get together with your friends every now and then. You want to have a big party every once in a while with your coworkers, something like that. This is what home bartending is all about, and this is what this channel is specifically about. It's about helping you guys that have busy professional lives, busy personal lives, but you still want to learn a great skill like home bartending. You still want to throw parties every now and then. You still want to enjoy a cocktail after a busy, tough day at work. You still want to have a great date night with your partner and something like that. This is what home bartending allows you to do, and this is the reason I created this channel. So this is another reason why I think 2026 is a great time to get into home bartending, because of channels like myself that are really geared towards helping specifically people that want to learn home bartending, as opposed to people that just want to learn bartending in general. Which is, you know, when I was first getting started, tons of great content on bartending, but it was all geared towards bartending in general. So it didn't really specify if you were trying to be a professional bartender or you're just trying to make a few drinks at home, and you have a full-time job, you just want to make a few drinks at home every now and then. So it really didn't specify between the two. But I've geared this channel specifically to making specifically to home bartenders, for people that want to learn how to make great cocktails out of their own kitchen. And it's not only myself, there's tons of other great channels that have popped up since 2020. So now there's even more great content out there. So just to summarize, 3 great reasons why I think 2026 is the best year to get into home bartending. One is that the rise, especially in terms of accessibility of ChatGPT and other AI models and things like that, really makes it easier to learn a lot of skills, including home bartending. Number 2, people want to go out. They still want to have a social experience, but they aren't going out to nightclubs. They want to have parties in the comfort of their loved one's home, their friend's home, their family member's home, their coworker's home. So home bartending allows you to host those kind of parties that really fill that void. And number 3, there's just more content, including my own channel, in terms of home bartending than there was even in 2020, or even just a few years ago in like 2022 or 2023, for example. So for all those different reasons, I think 2026 is the absolute best year to get into home bartending. So for all of you that are wanting to do that this year, if that's your New Year's resolution, or you just want to learn this for this year, I'm very excited for you, because I think this is the best time to do it. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. Thank you. Cheers. And if you found the advice in this video helpful, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I really like to do 2 styles of videos on this channel. The first will be a tutorial showing you guys how to make a specific cocktail. And the second style video will be more talking head style, like this one, where I go over different topics about home bartending, share tips and tricks, share stories from my own journey, and things like that I hope will help you guys become better home bartenders. If you're really serious and want to invest money into learning this hobby and really improving as a home bartender, I actually have a paid community on school.com. The link for that will be in the description below. Thank you. Cheers.